Shona and Kynan creep past without alerting the marrow, and now I want to locate our objective because we have spent quite some time in this delve site and it's time for a progress move. Let's find the actual grave of Etana. Now it's time for our arrival in the grave of Etana. If we remember our role that brought us here when we located our objective, we rolled an outcome where the situation favors us. And the way I interpret this is in line with this idea that this isn't exactly a fortress. So what this means to me is that this last room, this final resting place of Etana, is not guarded by an army. There will not be immediately available enemies. Now, they could show up at any minute, but they're not there right at the very beginning. Shona and Kynan make it to the end. It's very obviously an important place that they reach because it is a plateau, a platform where 3 separate tunnels meet. The plateau itself is hewn from the stone about 3 meters above the ground of a large cavern that is still natural stone. So this seems to have been one of these original underground open spaces that were connected by the original creators of this tomb, this, well, what is now a tomb, what was then probably a building of a different purpose from these precursor civilization people. But this is very obviously a cave. And with this plateau protruding into the cave for a few steps, to the left and right of it, stairs descending to the bottom. It's an oval-shaped room with a generously carved, smoothed out nook at the very opposite wall. And in the murk and gloom of the torch shedding flickering light into the open space, Kynan recognizes a little pedestal upon which rests a closed stone carved sarcophagus. Old worlder design with a relief of a person. Do you even pronounce it that way? Relief? I don't know. I would say relief. Anyway, so this shape of a person carved into the lid. On closer inspection, the floor of the cave is smoothed out and intricately decorated in designs both Ironlander and Marrow, Old Worlder and Marrow rather, with overlapping circles in some astronomical arrangement, another hint at ritual magic to channel the aligned stars in a certain way. And there's even a bit of residual light falling into the cavern because apparently at the very top of the ceiling some shafts creep all the way up towards the surface in a very small, narrow opening. So there is a little bit of airflow. Not that that really helps a huge amount, because that stench of decay, that warmth, this unnatural pulsating heat that radiates all throughout this site is strongest here. And Kynan and Shona immediately break out into a sweat as they step closer and look down upon this scenery in front of them. And being an experienced explorer of places like this, Kynan first off just raises a hand and very meticulously just inches forward, sweeping ahead with his foot and bending low and touching the floor, looking for cracks, looking for telltale signs of traps. So I think whether or not he finds something, whether or not he triggers something, we will make the outcome of a generic face danger roll here. Okay, that's good. We do have a weak hit, but we also have a complication then to go with it, which makes me think we probably find some sort of trap. Let's see how we can make this into a sensible price to pay for it. I think we're just gonna suffer 1 momentum here because we start moving very, very slowly. So in case there is something wanting to catch up with us, we're gonna make this a bit more likely now, just by the fact of the matter that Kynan and Shona are not bolting down these stairs. They are really checking every single step carefully before descending, and it takes them quite some time before they even make it to the floor. I think besides the occasional glance at each other, the blind understanding that they have formed in their partnership now, being locked in there together for quite some time, there is no conversation. They don't speak, not even whisper. It's just too oppressive and also just dangerous. They want to hear, they want to be on high alert, not distract each other. And what little needs to be said to coordinate is just gestures and nods and little movements. But bit by bit, inch by inch, they make it to the plateau where the sarcophagus rests. And again, we have these religious overtones. There's like a triptych carved into the wall behind the sarcophagus. The sarcophagus itself is adorned by all sorts of symbols. It is sealed with like a silken rope around it, also with a waxen seal that is again adorned with this old worlder religious symbol that Kynan has seen before but doesn't really know what to associate with, because this sort of religion is no longer really current in the Ironlands. And this is where Kynan starts to examine the sarcophagus and look at the cracks in the floor and see if there's any kind of mechanism that he can identify. Takes out some of his tools, little implements he brings with him, like a long needle and a feather, everything just to very gently explore whether he meets some resistance. So let's face danger again, see if the sarcophagus itself poses a challenge or whether Kynan determines it's safe to open. I think I want to just ask the Aspect and Focus Oracle what is going on with this sarcophagus and its surrounding area, but whatever it is, Kynan does well in identifying it. So aspect roll, 46 confined, 59 message. I think what happens is that Kynan does determine it's safe to open, and that he very carefully slips out his dagger and cuts this silken sealed robe off and pulls it away and nods to Shona as they very gingerly lift and push the lid aside. Probably not lifting it very high, just enough to be able to budge it initially and then push it. And I think I want to make another face danger roll, this time with iron, with the two of them, just to determine whether they manage to set it down in a way that doesn't shatter it and doesn't drop it on the floor. We get ourselves a weak hit, which I take to mean that, yes, they managed to not make a huge amount of noise, but it cost them momentum again. As tempted as I am to have this fall on Kynan's foot and do some damage, but I think that's a bit unepic for the scene we want to paint, so we'll just reflect this very careful, circumspect activity of the two of them as they just move it by inches and move around to the other side and pull it a little bit and just try to get it to the point where it tips over almost organically and then slides to the floor without breaking. And now, what do we see? What's the confined message? What is the content of this sarcophagus? What I'm picturing is a corpse in armor that doesn't really exist in the Ironlands anymore. They're dressed in a breastplate, plated arm guards, a full helmet with an iron mask that resembles female facial features in almost a caricature way, but very fine artistry. And the corpse has its arms crossed with a sword held between the arms and a shield on top of the chest. And that shield is our confined message. That shield has depictions of almost like a hieroglyphic stylized, like an iconographic message, not a written one, but more like if you picture the Bayeux tapestry, these little scenes of written individual words that Kynan and Shona cannot read, but combined with drawings and depictions that want to convey the story in a way that makes the potential grave robber maybe understand what they're about to do. Oh, and one very important thing I need to mention as part of my idea for both the treasure and the fate of Etana is that around her neck is a very striking piece of jewelry. Fine linked golden chains holding up little plates of silver and gold that are engraved with all sorts of ritualistic drawings and religious iconography that is very neatly placed around her neck, and it just immediately catches Kynan's eye as something that is incredibly valuable, and Shona no doubt notices it too. This is where I feel like this oppressive nature of the place just hits them strongest. Like the moment they lay eyes on this and they have just enough time to register the image in front of them, when I feel like it's appropriate now to endure stress. And the way I want to play this is that I don't want to deduct a set amount of stress so far yet. I just want to get an understanding of how they deal with it and whether there's any complications arising from this encounter of this horrific power that is located somewhere in this tomb. And I think it's pretty safe to say that this doesn't go so well. So, what happens? Well, we roll a match, and we roll either plus spirit or plus heart, whichever is higher, which puts us at a 5. We don't outrank the die roll, so it's a negative match. It's a catastrophic miss. Which means what exactly? We must roll on a certain table here. I think we must also deduct a certain amount of spirit. I think that puts us at 0 spirit, which gives us the option to roll on the table or to mark shaken or corrupted. Yeah, let me roll on this table. I think we have a couple of options that could make sense here as an outcome, so we're gonna roll on the table, see what goes on. 80, you persevere. Okay, so we are extremely shaken by the sight of this, well, by the opening of this coffin, of this sarcophagus. I think what probably happens immediately upon opening, Shona and Kynan let down the coffin lid. They gather round again, they look at the inside and they see this body, this inscription. They look at the pictograms, but what they also have immediately is this blast of unnatural energy hitting them, and these whispering voices just out of earshot starting up and trying to insinuate something as they look at the iconography on the shield and that message that tells the story of how the initial Ironlanders found this place before it had a sarcophagus in it, just as I would imagine it as a cave with like a statue, a horrific statue in it, and that when they destroyed this statue is when they unleashed this horror. So it was confined in that statue probably by the precursors, and then it tells the story of the corruption of Etana and how she gathered her followers and corrupted them in turn, and how the Marrow stepped in to convince the remaining Old Worlders to rise up against their corrupted leadership, and how at the last minute Etana, in a scene depicted there, was brought down, but the way it's depicted on the shield is that she almost swears an iron vow there. The same similar gesture, similar body posture that an Ironsworn would perhaps recognize, because I feel like these Ironsworn customs have to come from somewhere, and if not from the first settlers, then from whom would they come? And then we see this chain placed around Etana's neck and her being carried on a bier into this tomb and this put down in a sarcophagus, put to rest. And then a very clear final panel that instructs the opener to leave this undisturbed under any circumstances. Now that's Kynan's reaction. He gets blasted by this negative energy. He's rocked to the core. He understands immediately that, oh no, this is not a treasure for the taking. We can't disturb this. We should probably just put the lid back on and figure it out as we go along. But this is not the treasure we came here for, even though it looks like it. What about Shona? I think I want to do an action theme roll to get a grip on her activity here. How does she react to this, for her, extremely unusual sight, feeling, encounter? What does she do? 58 impress? 86 desolation. Impress, desolation. Let me just refer quickly. We had her as suspicious and proud, and she wants to advance her status. So impress, desolation, proud. Oh dear. I think what I can see Shona doing is to sort of overcompensate, reacting to this assault in a way of, you don't scare me, I came here for treasure and I'm gonna have it. So she reaches for the golden chain. Now I think I want to give Kynan a chance to catch on to this and stop her, so I want to do a face danger again to just see if we can push her away. Oh, good grief. No. So we pay the price, I think. Pay the price. Again, we have a table. I think there's a lot of potential parts here that can give us a hint to interpret the table results. So let us roll on the pay the price table. 98. A friend, companion, or ally is put in harm's way. Well, I do believe that is definitely happening. That probably would have happened regardless. So what happens? As Kynan recoils from the onslaught of the psychic energy unleashed by the opening of the coffin, Shona gets this look of stubborn determination on her face and braces herself, grabs for the golden chain, and while Kynan tries to, no, Mr. President, throw himself into that arm, she's too quick. She already rips it off unceremoniously as Kynan crashes into her, and she staggers a few steps to the side, but at that point there's already action happening. The corpse buried there sits up immediately in one jerky motion, scattering that sword, that shield out of the coffin into the ground, and immediately sort of an oily black liquid, not really material, but liquid looking, just a miasma shoots out of the eye hole and the mouth slit of that mask right at Shona. She gets the full blast of it in her face, and in a sense even Kynan almost knocks her into it with his attempt to get at the gold chain. And at the same time the arms of the corpse reach out and grab Shona by both wrists and just hold her as this open mouth, open eyes stream shoots into Shona's face, who has her own face in a silent scream, just her mouth open, and all of that goes into her. Let's get ourselves another aspect and focus roll to see what else happens around us, because I think this awakening has some other effects. Flooded. 67 entry. Flooded entry. Are we getting... like, is there a security measure in place that just now puts everything underwater? It sounds like something that Marrow would do, but is this... thematically, I think the initiative right now is with the horror we've just freed and unleashed. Alright, so the moment that this black liquid is unleashing itself from the corpse's face and into Shona's, it also seeps from the walls and from the corridors. I think we've already described it at the very entrance, that there was this oily sheen on everything, and all of that is now coming on the floor, like seeping towards the central chamber from everywhere in this tomb complex, and it's bringing all the beetles and insects and centipedes and scorpions and little snakes with them, and it's like a gigantic rush of just an endless stream flood of insects and just filth. So right away, Kynan's feet, as soon as he sees Shona get blasted, his feet get overrun by just skittering creatures, and he hears that rustle and rush of a mass of something being moved behind him as all of this crushes through the corridors and towards the central chamber. Now, what does Kynan do? I think the only thing he can think of at this moment is to rip his dagger from its sheath and ram it into Shona's chest. Now, with everything that's going on, at the risk of being boring, I think we're going to face danger here again. I'd call that a miss, which in this situation I think is not exactly ideal. So I think I want to at least get a weak hit here and burn the momentum off, so we're back to +2. And now we gotta figure out the consequence of the weak hit. I think we gotta endure stress again, it just makes sense. Okay, our spirit is 0, so we have to also pay 1 momentum, which puts us as +1, and we have to roll on that wonderful table again. Wait, first we have to roll the plus heart. We do lose another momentum, and we roll on the table again. But we persevere. This is going well. So what happens? I think as my main benefit here is I want to look at this from the horror's perspective for a second as well, because I think that's what we just freed. My notes for Etana were as follows. So she is the prison and she is a white, meaning, you know, in Ironsworn, in the setting, whites also wear these masks. They are conscious, they have goals. That's what she did. She swore this vow to find her redemption. But in my mind, this act of servitude and redemption of hers was basically to serve as the horror's prison. And what kept the horror from breaking its prison was this chain around her neck that we just removed. And now the horror has found itself a new vessel, is in the process of possessing it, and we've just wounded the vessel. Now I feel like a horror imbues its host with certain unearthly qualities, but it doesn't make it immune to injury or death. So if by injuring it now with this stroke of the dagger, while it doesn't kill Shona or incapacitate her, it puts the horror on the back foot to the extent where it now will prioritize defending itself and retreating over outright just attacking Kynan, and probably in this situation we're in just messing him up quite bad. So understanding the horror's motivation right now is in survival escape mode. It wants to get out of here and it wants to get rid of this person that's currently attacking it, but not in a way of confronting it, more in a way of protecting itself. So what happens? Kynan rams the dagger into Shona's sternum, causing her to stumble back a few steps, take a knee, as this wave of insects and filth just washes over her and over Kynan. And I think at the same time, Etana's body slumps back again, and Kynan has not a lot of options here. I think seeing Shona go down for just a moment gives him the impression that he can push an advantage, so he's going to try and finish her off, while at the same time the horror is trying to shield itself and protect itself to give itself enough time to recover and maybe create some kind of distraction to help it escape. That actually sounds like a nice scene challenge. So what I think happens is that this whole flood of insects, of beetles, of centipedes just streaming like a massive river all across the floor. That is something the horror in Shona's body now weaves around itself as it kneels there, starting to move Shona's lips, and this unearthly voice just permeating the air in that whisper just out of earshot, and this biomass just forming almost like a wall in front of it, trying to push Kynan away. And the scene challenge will be that Kynan has to beat this formidable scene challenge, closing the distance against this push of all of this filth before the horror has enough wherewithal to recuperate and then escape, I think, or try to make it escape. How it sets up its escape, I think, can we figure that out some way? What would be the means of, because I feel like it can also use probably this this whole mass of creatures around it to maybe even create itself a minion or something to guard its retreat. I think that sounds like a good idea. So it's using its invocation right now to both at the same time keep Kynan away and coalesce this mass of creatures into some monstrosity that can guard its retreat while it tries to escape, and that's what Kynan has to fight through to get at it. So scene challenge is get to the horror and engage it in combat before it finishes its invocation. Let's set it up. I think unfortunately this is going to be formidable because this is a very, very dangerous foe. We're rolling an awful lot of phase danger at the moment, but I think we have to continue it this way. How does Kynan do this? I think it's more like him to try and keep his balance and get closer and just use maybe climb on the sarcophagus and try and get a jump and not to slip. That's a weak hit, which gives us a progress, but also marks the progress on the countdown timer. That's not good. We continue. Ooh. Another weak hit. So how do we envision this? There are these, I think it's almost at this point this wall of pulsating insects just obscures the horror in Shona's body from view. It occasionally lashes out with these pseudopods that it forms out of this biomass, like handless arms that just swat at Kynan and push him back. And just as he tries to climb on the sarcophagus to jump into this and maybe use the momentum to push through, it just knocks him off again, and he has to try and not get overwhelmed and stay on his feet. So we gotta continue. Better get some better rolls in here now. Oh boy. Yeah, we have another weak hit. Not even. No, we have a miss. Ooh. Well, since we're being battered about, let's go for health and endure harm. So at the moment we are on a 2 health then. And endure harm. At least that one goes well. I don't want to go into negative momentum, so I just want to take 1 momentum and embrace the pain. But we only got 1 countdown box left, so we're probably going to fail this one. And the horror is going to get away, which narratively makes the most sense. So Kynan can't get there in time. The pushback is too strong. He gets swept away. Whenever he gets closer, he gets pushed back again as the horror lashes out, and eventually, before long, a new sound, the howl of an unnatural voice, just rings out as the horror brings into being a night spawn. What's a night spawn? It's a formidable foe. Mutated, so we can build it through oracles, which I find interesting. I always wanted to do this. And its purpose is to protect now the retreat of the horror. So let's build ourselves a monstrosity, shall we? I think there's a few sizes in here that don't make sense, like if it's Titanic or whale sized. I'm not entirely sure this would work in this chamber. So let's keep it to a reasonable perspective and safeguard the right to re-roll this. Let's see. It is person-sized, so it's of medium size. What is its primary form? It's a hybrid. I think that actually makes some sense considering how much what a diverse kind of material our horror has to work with. 16 humanoid, 36 spider, humanoid spider. Why am I picturing the Witch of Isolith from Dark Souls all of a sudden? No idea. I think what we're encountering here is as this screech rings out, the curtain of insects parts, and Kynan has a moment to glimpse the body of Shona possessed by the horror, now on its feet again, and over its, like behind its form, a larger form with a spider body and a humanoid shaped torso that is, however, very insectoid in its overall design. So it's chitinous, it has mandibles, it has multiple arms, and that hairy spider body. He sees that in front of him as the horror makes to turn and have its spider minion attack. And behind him, Kynan hears the sound of a sword being picked up, and as he stands there, rattled, dumbfounded, his own sword hanging limply, the White of Etana step next to him, raising her own shield as they face the spidery night spawn. Unfortunately, I don't have a huge amount of recording time this week, or editing time, so I'm gonna have to leave it here. I'm very sorry, we'll have to fight this thing next time. Thank you very much for watching. I'll catch you then, and bye for now.